Today, I'm excited to be interviewing Nick McMahon, the founder of Enterprise Asset Solutions, which is an IT asset disposition and recycling company based in Omaha, Nebraska. So Nick, Enterprise Asset Solutions offers an innovative recycling program. How does it work, and what is new or different about your program?
Well, Ken, there's not any one size fit all for our programs, but our base core foundational program it's really simple. We offer free local pickup anywhere within 50 miles of the Omaha, Lincoln, and Council Bluffs metro areas. And that's for business customers who commit to and agree to use our services. We will not charge for pickup of any e-waste. That includes e-waste that has a cost to us to dispose, such as flat panel monitors, printers, even the tube monitors. We do not charge our business customers for those. Oftentimes I'm asked, wow, how are you able to do this? Well, it's pretty simple. When we're your exclusive provider, we can get some of that cost back through refurbishment and remarketing of the other assets that still have value. It is one thing that sets me apart from some of my competition. I also offer free certificates of data destruction and chain of custody. We also offer free certificates of data destruction, chain of custody. We even have a program for our smaller companies like MSPs or managed service providers where I'll place my totes however many they want. They might, I've got a client that has 3 totes and they call me when those 3 totes are full. I have clients that have 5 totes and we'll place those totes in your location. If you call me when they're full, and we'll stop by and pick them up when it's convenient for you. And I also even cover the upfront investment of the totes so that there's no investment on the client's part and we just handle the rest. They do have our logos on them as well as, our phone number. And then they do have a barcode on them as well for tracking purposes so that we know where that tote is at all times, what location it's assigned to.
And what goes into bins?
Or
what typically is in those bins?
Typically, we'll see computers go into them. We'll see monitors. We'll see, they're not very big totes. So they work for those smaller companies that don't have tons and tons of volume. The companies that have the higher volume will typically palletize or stack in an area, that in their inventory areas, things like that.
And then you come and pick up those pallets.
Yep.
Very good.